Welcome, Gary and Andy. Good to have you here today.
Great to be here. Thank you.
I hear Forth is making big moves in the market. What are they and why now?
Firstly, a little bit about Forth, the organisation. We're a tier 1 vendor. Been around for about 20 years. We're made up of 900 staff around the globe. We have over 7,000 customers in about 120,000 different locations around the world. One of our primary focuses is the QSR market as such. Some example customers would be McDonald's, KFC, Hungry Jack's, Red Rooster, Porto, Taco Bell, just to give you an idea that we're absolutely in this sweet spot and very sophisticated as a player, tier 1 player as such. But like many businesses, including within the IT industry over the last 12 months, there's been on the Forth side consolidation within the business. But now we've moved on from that in 2021 and going forward, that we are set to make significant investments. In fact, we're already doing that right now in the many millions into two primary areas within the business. One is R&D, and of course that's all about extending the value and the offerings to our customers. And second to that is basically people on the ground. That's both supporting, servicing, as well as building our business globally, as well as here in Australia and to the broader Asia Pacific region as such. And what we're seeing, of course, is essentially the early stage of bounce back from last year. And we're prepping, getting ready to help customers with their digital transformation, both locally as well as globally.
Hey, Andy, tell us about the digital transformation that's happening within the QSR sector and how Forth can help.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Justine. I would say there's really two major trends that we're seeing as part of this digital transformation. I kind of look at them as bookends. On the one end, there's an explosion of devices that are producing data, and these devices range from simple devices like a grill or a fryer that have started producing data to more complex systems. The traditional one we think about is the point of sale, but as we saw last year, there was an influx of different ways that people were entering orders into our customers, whether that was through kiosks or delivery aggregators, for example. And the other thing that we're seeing is some of these customers are purchasing technology companies. We've seen some big moves in the industry over the last, I'd say over the last year, but even as recent as this week, we saw some of our customers actually making pretty significant technology investments. And what we foresee is that those investments, that data is going to ultimately trickle to us in turning that data into and combining that with operational tools that their restaurant operators will use. And so that's really where Forth sits, is kind of that consumer of that data to turn it into an operational tool. And then the other bookend is really about becoming that source of the truth, if you will. So our systems are not only producing data, but we're also able to consolidate data from third parties to make it much simpler for our customers to get to that source of the truth, so to speak.
Gary, what do you see as the top priorities for QSRs for 2021?
Well, the number one we're seeing in the marketplace is essentially digitization of operations and standardization of both systems and process within the business. And that's, what does that really mean? It's really about allowing QSRs to focus 80 to 90% of their time focusing on the consumer as opposed to the reverse. Beyond that, number one that we're seeing clearly being spoken to us in the marketplace is essentially flexibility to demand and setting up for the inevitable growth that's coming. We're already seeing that certainly here domestically and various pockets across Asia Pacific as well. Also, as we know through the COVID time, that there's an increase in the delivery model. In fact, some businesses have moved to that almost as a 100% status of their business within the QSR space. But of course, along with that, there's been an increase in costs. So one of the other priorities that we're seeing from businesses on that basis is how do we exit that cost within the business at some level? And the areas that they're talking to us about in terms of doing so, of course, is in the obvious areas of inventory, waste, use of dynamic or leveraging dynamic production, combined with essentially reducing time on task within the business. From a work process or a workflow standpoint, it's all about hitting those costs to offset their new way of doing business in the consumer environments. And these are all areas that are strengths and where Forth excels.
How have back office systems been tested during this time, and are they up to scratch?
Where we saw back offices really tested was on the ability to provide customers with a forecast. And so we worked very closely with our customers as they went through these unpredictable phases of demand, looking at the data that was being produced when the restaurants were open, being able to analyze that, and then incorporating our flexible forecasting engine to really help them kind of create a forecast, if you will, for their new reality. I think the other piece, when you combine that same forecasting logic into the labor module, it's really about making sure that you're adjusting where, and as Gary mentioned, getting the right people in the right positions at the right time. Is everybody up to scratch? I'd like to say they're not. And that's where Forth can help you.
Exactly. Great. Another last question for Gary. It's all about the customer experience. What is Forth doing to enhance this?
Our focus in terms of enhancing that consumer experience is really about Forth operationalizing big data. As we know, like many companies, and certainly in the QSR space, they're creating huge amounts of data. But how do they use it? How do they make sense of it within their business? And that's where Forth steps in. It's about transforming this data into actionable outcomes that can actually impact being able to be more client-facing and the quality of product, the quality of service that's actually delivered. And that provides a big point of difference to their competitors in their local market, their national, or their global markets for that matter. And that's what the consumer demands. You and I in this room, we want better service when we go into a restaurant, whether that's a QSR or a full-service restaurant. And certainly this is how we can make significant impacts to a QSR's business.
Is there any QSRs out there wanting to get in touch? How do they get in touch with you guys?
You can go to forth.com, as in the number forth.com, FOURTH.com. Or you can reach out directly on my email address, which is gary.morley, that's gary.morley, MORLEY, at forth.com, FOURTH.com.
Terrific. Gary and Andy, thank you very much for your time today.
Appreciate your time too. Thanks, Justine.
Thank you very much, Justine.